And welcome back to another episode of But Wait, There's More, filmed here at Silver Wolf Comics and Games. This is episode 10, and we apologize for the delay in this episode from the last one. Between the holidays and life, it conspired against us. But that's in the past, this is the present, and we're
getting ready to talk about the future.
Exactly. As a review, last week we witnessed the demise of young Matt's second character, Oben Wilson. Died to some bacilli.
Bummer.
And now we have reached Mordeheim. I believe we spoke a little bit about Joe on the Death's Head Inn and the big screen he had, and the party got to watch Lithian, his wife's sisters, fight in the arena on his big screen.
Dangerous, dangerous women. In-laws, who knew?
And so now the group has got to figure out a way to get access to them or to free them. And so their idea was, and kind of what I was hoping they would do, is enter the arena and get enough notoriety in order to challenge the drow priestess that is holding them captive. So they do this, they enter the arena and proceed to have several
just intermediate to medium weight bouts.
Yeah.
The various critters and denizens of the deep dark that come along and in turn were crushed by us. For once we actually started to work together and everybody seemed to know what they were doing, and well, it was almost unfair, because they came, we saw, we conquered, the end.
Yeah. Now, and the reason why they would be able to work their way up to challenging this priestess is because these fights, as I believe we mentioned last week, or last time, was in honor of Loviatar, the goddess of pain and death. And so if you cause enough mayhem and havoc, you'll get in good with these people who psychotically enjoy watching that kind of thing. Think Rome, but on steroids.
Or crack, one of the other.
Yeah, one of the two. So they crush these medium weight bouts. They do fairly well. They run into a spectator, which when they first saw it, for those who don't know, a spectator is basically like a beholder light. It's Beholder Junior, and slightly less scary. And this culminates, as this goes on, the crowd is really getting into it because they are slaughtering people, just completely annihilating them. And this was a case of Ricky's character, Turin, the ranger, really shining. And he is becoming quickly the crowd favorite.
Yeah, he is definitely the arena phenom for the trick shots and just through the loophole, around the corner, down 2 blocks, and hit that guy. And he does it again and again. Well, he makes such a striking figure in his new purple armor that, hey, they
Dragon scale.
They can't miss the guy, and everybody's they're just loving it. Well, these folks, they have a way of truly celebrating their real faves after the bout, when they're if you actually slaughter somebody very well on the spot, they usually like to shower their favorite with gifts. And in this case, it's usually buckets of actual blood. Now, where they're getting the blood, I don't know. I mean, we were making jokes about it coming down from the nosebleed seats. It's possible, but it's a thing that they do. So I'm guessing that they probably, it might be donations, it might be just this one poor guy that they squeeze out once in a while and they fill the buckets and throw it. I don't know.
They have drains in the arena floor and they collect.
There you go. See, didn't see that. But anyway, they throw blood on the guy. Now here he is. He's got this resplendent, perfect, absolutely tailored armor, and they throw blood on him. He is upset at this naturally, and of course he kind of in lamentation because purple is his favorite color. He just kind of calls to the skies that it was purple. But of course the crowds hear that and they pick it up as a chant because they figure, oh well, yeah, it was purple and now it's red and now he's got to go get some more red on it. Woo! And it's just. Meanwhile, the rest of us are sitting here watching these insane people. It's like we're fighting and we're the crazy ones. Maybe not.
Yeah. So the crowd quickly takes it up as a chant. It was purple. It was purple, and this goes on, and and it follows him.
Yeah, because we're not going to let it go either.
No. And so they eventually really impress not just the crowd, but the high priest of Loviatar. No, the
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, never mind.
the drow was the priestess.
Yeah, the priestess. It draws the eye. Never mind.
Ignore
the dwarf.
The priest of Loviatar. There were other minor priestesses later.
I'm short. You can only see so high.
Yeah. And so he honors them by inviting them to a meal, but he also gives them a request. You are kind of our champions. What would what can we do to honor you for honoring Loviatar so much, for inflicting so much pain and death, in her name? Well, perfect opportunity. They request to challenge the drow envoys. Now, being that this is a festival in honor of Loviatar, and these drow were there as envoys and diplomatic ties to these Duergar, they can't readily say no. So the envoys have to fight, and it gets arranged, and they do the fight with the two sisters kind of on the sidelines as the prize. Now, if you recall, I believe we talked about how the sisters have these collars on their necks, very intricate black collars. It almost looks like lace. It's engraved with spiders. Now, these collars are kill collars. Very nasty pieces of work. The high priestess, the drow high priestess, has a switch, a magical doodad, that when she activates it, it activates the collars, and spiders burrow under the wearer's skin and consumes them from the inside. Picture the Mummy with the scarabs. It's essentially that. Yeah. If you've seen that movie.
It's a typical drow sorcery. It's interesting, it's intricate, it's very inventive, but gross and nasty all at the same time.
Yeah. Now, you might ask what's preventing the high priestess to hit the button should they start losing? Well, this comes into, and this is important throughout, the Duergar are not stupid people. They might be a little bit crazy, but they're not stupid, and they don't want these fights fixed. They don't want outside interference, and if you're slinging magic around, they're also not stupid enough to let mages inside and then potentially cast fireballs or whatnot out into the crowd. So there is a dome of anti-magic. Magic cannot go in, magic cannot come out. Magic can happen inside or outside, but it cannot go either way. And so this prevents the high priestess from activating it should our party win. And it keeps the two sisters safe. The whole anti-magic thing will come in later as well. You'll see. And so they have this fight, and the party rolls decently for initiative, with our cleric rolling fairly high.
Oof. Yeah, we needed that because it was. I mean, there's at least personally, there's a mystique about the Drow that it's bad enough running into one. I mean, there's several novels. I mean, there's one heroic one and a whole mess of nasty ones, and every one of them is a real piece of work. It's skilled beyond their years, and it's enchantments and speeds and magic and this and that and the other. So, okay, yeah, he or she is probably all of 120 pounds and 5 feet, 5 foot even. That's it. But they're a whirlwind. How the hell do you not nail them down long enough to fight them? And here we are.
Right. Now, the cleric Rithian is very, has a great idea. She is going to drop a daylight spell in the middle of the arena and really mess over the Drow because they're sunlight sensitive, being that they live in the Underdark all the time. Anything that produces light of the caliber of the sun is going to be painful for them.
And we didn't think beyond that.
It was a great idea, but the problem was that now she's got a big target on her back because she is the one who produced the spell. So they are going to gun for her first. Now, normally this wouldn't be too much of an issue, but the way the party's battle line was set up, there were some fairly large holes in the line, which the Drow took advantage of. And so, before anybody can do anything, the Drow have slipped past the tanks and gone after Rithian the cleric, the primary healer, and extinguished her first. Even though it was more difficult for them to hit her, they still managed to do it because they were able to get some flanks and cancel out the disadvantage that the sunlight was doing to them. And then once she was down, well, because it was her magic that produced the light, it goes away. And then after that, well, who was close by the main healer? The secondary healer, the druid, Ailey, which was an issue.
Yeah, because now it's not. This is what happens when you're used to dungeon crawling and you're fighting monsters. Monsters come straight at you, and you fight them, and the end. Or maybe it's your end. You never know. But now, all of a sudden, you're fighting a trained team that know how to fight, and actually they do the things that you would normally do. And they catch you flat-footed enough, and all of a sudden now we're in the middle of a furball, and the crowd goes wild.
Yes, because now already from the get-go, the party is looking pretty banged up. Both healers are down. Turin, who was so amazing earlier, goes on this interesting streak of critically hitting and critically failing, where he's doing tons of damage, but some of that tons of damage is actually to the party, and so the crowd's loving it. They figure he's just playing it up.
He's shooting his own! Woohoo!
Yeah, for Loviatar, more pain and death all around. And so they decide to bathe him in even more blood, because obviously he must be doing it for their enjoyment. He's drawing his own party's blood. Why would he do that?
Does he know Rowdy Piper? My God!
So there was more. It was purple chants, more buckets of blood, and more chaos and mayhem. Now, in the midst of all this and the mood turning very bleak for the party, because both of the healers are down within, 1 or 2 turns?
2 turns, 3 turns max. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, crap.
Yeah, it's looking very hairy right now when Fergus steps up to the plate.
Dum, dum, dum. Well, actually, he's down here.
Yeah. And he surprises a few people because all they think of him as the tank. Just the guy that goes out there and gets beat on.
He's a crazy drunk who goes out front.
Right. Well, what they don't remember, what a lot of people didn't remember, was that he was an Eldritch Knight. Now, this makes him slightly magical, and one of the spells that he has as an Eldritch Knight is Cure Wounds. Luckily, Rithian is right next to him, laying unconscious on the ground.
Sprawled out on the ground with a very shocked look on her face.
And he reaches back and hits her with Cure Wounds and brings her back to consciousness.
Fix us quickly!
And because of this, it is then her turn after his, and she quickly...
Luckily.
Yeah. Luckily, it's her turn after his, and she immediately blows all of her healing spells. She uses everything she's got.
She's throwing spells like it was glorious, because all of a sudden, where everybody was on the nigh edge of being dead, all of a sudden it's like, ooh.
Everybody is nearly, if not at full health, very nearly at full health.
It was beautiful, because all the Drow are looking at each other like, oh crap, we got to do this all over again. Get him!
And from there, the fight kind of devolves. You know, it's still kind of tenuous at points, but they've crested the initial like tons of damage, and attrition is starting to take shape, and they're able to output more damage than the Drow are, and able to output more damage than the Drow priest is able to heal. Because
plus she started running short on stuff at that point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, how many spells did you bring? Not enough.
So, again, with the attrition and getting everybody back up to health, they're able to turn it around and eventually grind down the Drow and finish them off, freeing the sisters from the clutches of this Drow high priestess, who really could care less if she killed them.
But luckily, she had to play fair.
Yes, she had to, because while these people are evil, the Duergar are evil in that they want pain and death for their goddess. They also want it to be fair. They want fair fights, because there's gambling involved.
Of course.
So you want to have an establishment
for the goddess and my profits.
Yeah, and you don't want to piss off Loviatar, because with a celebration of this size, she's probably taken notice, and she's probably enjoying the festivities quite a bit.
If she isn't actually there, sitting in the stands.
Right, which can happen. Sometimes in D&D, sometimes a god or a goddess will take mortal form, look like a mortal, and go partake in whatever is going on. In her case, she might be in the crowd having a really good time watching all this death and destruction. Who knows? You don't want to mess with something like that. You ruin this lady's party, and well, bad things are going to happen.
That's where that smite button comes in.
And so after the Drow are dead, they get the little magical doodad, remote control, whatever you want to call it, and collect the sisters and
get those bloody things off of them.
Yeah.
It was. We didn't really have time to have Old Home Week. It was something of a shock because this was actually the first time that they physically laid eyes on their sister in better than 25 years. So there was...
Now, this is after we went back to the inn, because
of course, yes.
Lithian was in disguise and not fighting, because she didn't want the Drow priestess to recognize her and make her hit the button early. So she's been in disguise, and not until they get back to the tavern and securely secreted away in their rooms did the disguise drop, and they actually get this reunion.
Yeah, because it was very simply these two are probably a real handful for just about anybody. Then why are these random strangers fighting for us. Why? Why did they free us? Anybody would be suspicious, but well, with Drow, it kind of comes with the territory that they're naturally suspicious of anybody's motivations. So to actually go in there, they didn't recognize they didn't recognize their own sister at first because the armor and so on and so on, and this.
And she was actually, she'd used magic to disguise herself and made herself look like some other kind of elf.
Yeah, just minor. It's like change the features, change the
skin tone.
Yeah, so just minor stuff. Because you don't have to get ridiculous with it. And honestly, I think anybody who's any well versed in magic would pick up something if you have this huge enchantment all over yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was some moments of disbelief, and even now, because it's going to take some time for them to decompress. But it was a surprise for all, and it's just, honestly, people back from the dead on both sides of the equation, and then all we had to do was like, okay, now we're gonna have a little confab. One more time.
Hey folks, we had a little technical difficulty.
Somebody played with the camera.
But we're back, and we were talking about the reunion that Lithian had with her sisters. And
tearjerker. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so while all of that was going on, other things were transpiring. The party had been invited to this big gala event, this feast, celebrating the festival, and it's kind of the last big to-do before the final day, in which there is going to be a grand melee where they empty the slave pens underneath the arena, and all the slaves fight until only one is left. And so, as part of this, and they know this is going on because they've been invited to the feast.
A formal introduction.
Yes.
A formal
invitation. And because they are these big conquering gladiators, they kind of have free reign of the place at the time, at least the arena. So they walk around the slave pens, and they talk to some people, and they meet a dwarven battle rager named Gotrek, who happened to be captured while he was drunk and kind of wandering around in the Underdark where he shouldn't. For those of you who don't know, dwarven battle ragers are mildly psychotic dwarves who wear armor that is covered in spikes, and they never bathe. Rarely.
You drop them in the river once a month.
Yeah. And part of that is they very rarely ever take off their armor. It's kind of a part of them, and in fact, this dwarf is actually wearing his armor because they couldn't get it off
of him.
And in the process of speaking with him, they introduce themselves and say, hey, we're not with these people, we're trying to do this thing, we're thinking about trying to get all of you out. And he basically says, well, that's good, because I really don't want to slaughter everybody, so if you could make that happen before tomorrow, that would be great. Something that is very cool about the Battle Rager is that in the Sword Coast Adventure Guide put out by Wizards of the Coast, it's a supplement for 5th edition D&D, you can actually play a Dwarven Battle Rager. It's a Barbarian class feature. It's an archetype. You choose Barbarian, then if you're a Dwarf, you can say, oh, I'm going to be a Battle Rager. And so you get to wear the spiky armor, and you get to run into combat and just kind of throw yourself at people and thrash around and whatnot. And it's a good time. Battle Ragers are fun.
Well, yeah. Any military unit where part of their training is breaking down a steel oak door with your head.
Yeah.
It's just, they're not the brightest, but they mean well.
Yeah, I look forward to playing one at some point. It's a good time. But so now they have this extra thing that they want to do is free the captives. Now, part of this reason that I did this is to introduce Helden, Matt's new character. Now, with introducing new characters, say one of your players, their character dies, you don't want to just say, "Oh, well, you're out of the game. You lose. You're the weakest link. Goodbye." You don't want to do that. So you let them create a new character, and now you have to find a way to introduce that character to the group. You can't just "Oh, hi, Jim. It's good to see you. You look kind of familiar."
You look a lot like that last kid.
Yeah, you can't just plop and they just know this guy. No, like this is a brand new person, and so they have to introduce themselves some fashion to the party and show the party that they are worthwhile to bring along. And so my plan was that the party would conduct this jailbreak, and in the midst of this jailbreak, Helden would show that as a human sorcerer, he is very worthy to be, he can do some really awesome stuff in combat, so why don't you tag along with us? That was the plan, but as with most things, plans don't survive contact with the enemy. So anyway, so now they have this extra thing that they need to do, preferably that night. And so their plan is to attend this feast and, carouse and make sure that everybody else is liquored up. For those who don't have a very high constitution, they'll pretend to drink. Those who can will drink.
Practice. Yeah.
And just generally show, that they are with it and having a good time, and just try and get everybody as drunk as possible.
We did.
Yes, they did. It was very entertaining. Now, part of this big gala event was the Dwergar's idea of entertainment. Mind you, they serve Loviatar, so it's not your regular floor show of dancing girls and guys who spit fire and do backflips. No.
Bring in the slaves. We must beat some of them.
Yeah. So they haul in some slaves, and this was my opportunity for them to meet Helden for the first time, to bring his character in. And so they line up the slaves, and the high priest is like, looks at the party. They've done so much damage to everybody else. Surely they would like to whip and cause pain to some meager slaves before those slaves go die tomorrow.
Yeah. Would you like to inflict some random carnage before the entree arrives?
Yeah. And Krontis, our tiefling rogue, who has an enlightened self-interest, to quote Ray here.
That's the easiest way to explain the guy.
He figures that he'll fit in. The rest of the group is kind of like they're trying to not show their revulsion at the idea.
I'm tired.
Yeah, so
you do it.
So he says, "I'll do it," very happily. Which this comes into play later on. His enjoyment of this.
Well, it's at this particular moment in time, I'm thinking, oh, he's going to do something clever along the lines of, he's going to just kind of pick some random person, and as he walks by them where they're chained, some little whisper like, just kind of fake it, because I'm going to go easy. Oh, no.
No.
No, he goes in there and he beats the crap out of him.
Yeah, and he rolls randomly and ends up getting Helden. This very charismatic sorcerer, and so he lays into him. He gives him a few good whips, and it's like, oh, that was fun. It's like, here's your whip back. And then the high priest is like, very good. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Guards, take these slaves away. Except in a more Scottish brogue type accent.
Yeah, just Yeah.
But and so the party kind of after that the party starts filtering away as the gala starts dying down. And some of them are walking back, and one of them in particular, Ailey, the druid, um, is walking back, and she gets to witness an event. Um, the event in question being Heldon's attempt to escape from the guards. Now, let's set this up for you. These individuals have an arena specially built for gladiatorial competitions where they throw any number of critters.
Yeah, underdark critters to liven things up. Slaves, captives, criminals, murderers, Lord knows what.
Magic users, any kind of combatant you can imagine. Anything to spice things up.
So the deal is now you figure anybody like this, and these people are well versed in just military common sense. They are good fighters. They are good soldiers, which is something you don't often see in a realm where it's all about the individual fighter. So they have things in place where no matter what captive they have a way to keep track of them and keep them under control. Because it's one thing if you've got a fighter, a street thief, or a rogue of something. The guy's good with a knife, okay, or this guy's good with a sword. Fine. All you got to do is you just keep a few armed men to keep him in check. But then you've got some guy who can just do this and blow up half the building. They usually have something in place for that as well.
To wit, the anti-magic dome and the cells being anti-magic zones. These people don't mess around. They've been around for a while, and they've been worshiping Loviatar for a while, and they're not going to let some guy who can do magical things in an inappropriate context.
Like blowing up the city. You don't
want to blow up the audience while you're trying to have a good time. And so up to that point, Heldon hasn't been able to use magic. He hasn't been able to magic his way out of anything, and his character's kind of stuck there, and he got led over to get beaten, and now he's being led back by some dark dwarves. And this is where the fun ensues. This is a story that I've told many times because it stuck with me.
It's the easiest way to get through this part of the story is a cautionary tale on how things can go wrong for you if you try if your BS is not strong.
Yeah, if it's not on point and you try and be clever with people who are clever themselves and you just aren't clever enough.
Yeah, sadly. It's trying to put one over on the guard. It's a staple of a lot of escape movies and so on. There's always that one dumb guard. There's always that one that the hero manages to outsmart or poke him in the eye or boot him out the window, one or the other. In this case, that's not what happens.
And so Heldon is being led back to his anti-magic cell, and to this point, he really hasn't been able to use too much magic. So Matt asks me, can I use magic now? The answer, very simply, is yes, he can use magic. However, he doesn't ask a very important question. Should I use magic? And more importantly, he doesn't inspect the manacles that he's wearing. And because he doesn't ask me these questions, I just give him very simple answers. Yes, you can use magic. So he tries to be clever, and he's going to now cast Alter Self to shrink his wrist and slip out of the manacles. Now, if this were any other kind of guard like kobolds or gnolls or people who were not of at least average or above average intelligence, this would work just fine. He'd slip away, he'd teleport away, whatever. it wouldn't be a big deal. However, these people, I thought I made it pretty obvious that they were used to dealing with magic users. I guess I didn't make the point until spikes shot through from the manacles through his wrist, preventing him from slipping out of them.
Pretty much killed the spell too.
Yeah, these manacles aren't meant to prevent you from using magic so much as inflict a serious amount of pain should you attempt to. And at that point, the guards notice.
Bad. Just bad.
Like, oh, looky here, we got one trying to escape. Excellent. And, I figured, at this point, just walk quietly, go back to your cell and wait for the rest of the party to conduct the jailbreak. Because they'd kind of already been planning this, but I guess he wanted to escape on his own to show that he was...
I'm not the damsel in distress.
Yeah, he wanted to do it on his own. And I respect that, but... Like, okay, well, all right, that one attempt failed. Just go back to your cell. You'll be okay. No.
Excellent initiative, poor execution.
Yeah. Being that he's a sorcerer, he's very charismatic. That's their primary stat. And so he's got just about every skill in the charisma tree. Persuasion, deception, there's something else, and performance. I think the only thing he didn't have was performance. And so he tries to bluff his way out. Now, with me, it's a role-playing game. So I want you to role-play with me. I want you to act it out. And if your acting is really good and you role-play really well, the difficulty level of the role that you have to make gets progressively lower. If you can impress me such that you lie so well to my face that I believe your character, or my NPC would believe your character, you wouldn't even have to roll. Like, there's been times where they've had whole conversations with my NPCs and a roll was never made because they did well. They were convincing. And it was just like, fine. It's my way of rewarding good role play. On the flip side of that, if you do not role play well, the difficulty goes up. If you feed me a line of BS that no one in their right minds would swallow, the difficulty level just keeps going higher and higher and higher, and can actually become impossible. Because if you tell me something that just straight up no one would believe,
something that is patently BS from point one,
it's just like, I'll tell you to roll and you can roll, but it's still not going to go well for you. And this is one of those cases because he looks at the guard and he says, "You know what? Good job, you caught me. But guess what? I'm your undercover boss. And, so you're going to want to let me go because once you let me go, I'll give all of you promotions. And that means raises and, this and that." Mind you, human sorcerer talking to a dark dwarf. And the human sorcerer is wearing manacles that injure him anytime he attempts to use magic. So he can't be casting disguise self on himself because the manacles would activate. And, the dark dwarves, while they don't mind interacting with other people and celebrating the party for, doing so well in the arena, they're kind of specious. Their higher-ups are all fellow dark dwarves.
Yeah, they don't mix much. It's just the way of it.
And so this was one of those cases where it's obvious that this is not true. But I tell him to roll, and he rolls really well. I mean, he's got something on the order of like a +9 to his roll. So he rolls and he hits a 27. He He thinks he's got this in the bag. And normally at 27 is amazing. And you would normally succeed at what you're trying to do. However, because of this system that I have personally as a DM, it's one of my tics, no, he would have had to critically succeed and then critically succeed again for this dark dwarf to even remotely believe him. And so the dwarf looks at him and goes, "Oh, really? You're our boss? Well, since you're our boss and quite obviously a worshipper of Loviatar, you'll be wanting us to beat you then, won't you?" And he proceeds to whip him with his flail. Just beats the snot out of him. Doesn't kill him, just does some damage, enough to get the point across like, hey, you might just want to wait, go back to your cell and let the party rescue you, or attempt plan B, if he had a plan B. He didn't have a plan B. He tried to go for plan A again. And so, again, that last one was a quote. This one's a quote again. I may not have it perfectly, but it's along those lines.
To paraphrase, yeah.
To paraphrase, he said, "Oh, really good job. That beating was great. Yeah, but really, I am your undercover boss, and me and Loviatar, me and him are tight. We're like this. We're close." Loviatar, goddess of pain and death. And so he says, you'll. So once you let me go, I'll give you all promotions. Really? Well, thanks for letting me know that. And since you and Loviatar are like this, and you worship her so much, you'll really be wanting us to beat you now. And now all the guards pile on with their flails.
All the guards just dogpile him and beat him so badly. Now, on the clock, he has literally been playing this character for about half an hour.
30 minutes.
And it's just, oh no, what has he done?
He's essentially killed himself. Now, he played a fighter and he played a druid. And he played the druid as a shape-shifting druid, so he was all about melee combat. So both of his characters were more melee-based and less range caster type.
And not as squishy.
And so I kind of wanted him to have a chance to actually play this character instead of losing it within the first 30 minutes. And so despite the fact that he failed all of his death saving rolls as he was getting dragged to the prison, I allowed Gotrek, the dirty battle rager, to save his life, to resuscitate him, as it were, and save him. Now, there were some consequences because, it's called septic shock. This dwarf is filthy. And he just kind of spits in some mud, mixes it together, slathers it on his wounds.
Bandage!
So, as punishment, he lost 4 hit points off of his maximum hit point total. And, being that Loviatar, who at some point might have been in this city, certainly she's noticed this celebration in her name, and she probably noticed this young human using her name in vain and calling her a him. She cursed Helden and made it such that in order for him to cast a spell, he had to inflict pain upon himself. And this took the shape of him having to roll a d4 and taking that much damage anytime he wanted to cast a spell. Now, whether he cut himself or flagellated himself or whatnot, it didn't matter how he hurt himself. It kind of devolved to hitting himself in the nuts.
Yeah. His problem was, it's like, okay, you're going to injure yourself somehow before you can do the thing. but you're unarmed. You have nothing on. You're wearing rags. I mean, there's nothing that you're going to have to cut yourself or poke yourself or harm yourself. And whether he was right or left-handed, I really do forget. But honestly, I really need to do this spell right now, so. And it was, I mean, out of game. It was funny at the moment, and it just didn't die. It just became that every time he had to do a spell, it's like, all right, come on, nut shot, there you go, and he was a trooper. He did it every time.
And I didn't, as the DM, I didn't even have to remind him, because the entire party, anytime he would cast a spell, was like, hit yourself in the nuts. People were on it. It was a thing. And so now Heldon is kind of unconscious in the anti-magic cell, cursed.
Bruised ghoulies.
Yeah, he's
bruised everything.
And now he kind of has to wait for the party to rescue him, because he has no other alternative. To it, that will be the end of this episode, because the next section will be the jailbreak and the other mishaps.
As a note to self, let's say, if you're going to search a city just for the sake of exploring to know where everything is, search all the buildings, including that one building over there that no one looked at.
Find out its purpose.
But wait, there's more.
So we'll be discussing that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit like, hit share, tell other people about it. If you want to find out more information about Silver Wolf Comics and Games, you can go to Facebook or Twitter. The links to that information will be below. Yeah, go out and experience D&D for yourself. It's a good time, and I highly recommend it. And good night.
Ciao.